Alrighty. Hope everyone's doing well. Don't mind me, I'm just getting myself some water. All right. Oh, let me fix that. We were gonna end up with a loop there for a minute. Can I get that a little less crooked, slightly? I'll take it. I have watermelon water with me. Sounds lovely, Meg. Yes! Foamy t-shirt. This is old as heck. Like, this shirt's gotta be a decade old at this point. At a guess. Writers Club of the Daleks. Hufflepuff from Scotland actually made it. Woo! Glad to have you back, Amanda. So, yeah, as the title implies, I figured that this time around we would talk about writing because I have written a novel that I have made the commitment to myself, at this point mostly, to publish next year. Now, this is most likely going to end up being self-published because I've tried shopping the novel around and haven't gotten any bites as yet, and that's several years I've been doing that. Council, do you live in the UK? No, I live in Northeast Vermont in New England, USA. Missed the last two because I slept. Nothing wrong with catching up on sleep. But anyway, so while it's not impossible, I'll probably continue as I'm doing the parts that I'm working on with the book right now. I will probably continue to shop it around to a few more publishers, see if any of them bite. But I'm not expecting them to, so my plan is to anticipate self-publishing. But this is a very long-term project. This is a book that I started writing in college. So, about 15 years ago. 15, 16 years ago, thereabouts. No, crap, 17. It was 17 years ago because it was my second year of college. Might have even been 18. Depending on when in the year I started. That part I don't remember. So at this point, it's become one of those things where, like, I just need to get it off my back and done. Because, like, I've been working on it in various degrees for so freaking long. Can we know what the book is about? Yes. What it is a fantasy story. I am going right now with fantasy adventure because it's not an epic fantasy. It's not on that big a scale. But it is in a fantastical world that has a mix of steampunk style technology, but also a lot of natural fairy, or they're referred to as the Fae in the book, magic, and humans and Fae don't get along. And the main character, as well as a few others, are what are called elementals, being that they are humans who exhibit very basic elemental powers. So the main character, Ferris, is a fire elemental. What that means is there are fiery energies that basically build up within his bodies that he has to expel and try not to hurt anyone doing it, because having this kind of magic, elemental magic, is not a gift. It's not cool. The amount of control any elemental has over it is incredibly limited. And as a result, they are very feared among other humans. But being human just with these abilities, they don't exactly have a place in the world of the Fae either. So you have these people torn between the two different sort of worlds that exist. not having a place where they belong, and following, as I said, Fire Elemental mainly, as he basically tries to just get free of the elements that pursue him. And there's a lot more to it than that, as far as background and the character's motivation and world building and all that. But I'm not going to get into that too much, because actually I should confess to this as well. I have actually started an author diary on this, which is, it's something that I really resisted ever doing, but I am doing it with this. It is a Patreon exclusive series. The reason I decided to do that is because I really want to commit to the author diary and see it through the entire process of what I'm doing, and also going back over the stuff I've already done. But I don't think that the view count and the subscriber interest on that, I think some people would be very interested, but I don't think the numbers would be there. And I think if I released that as a regular feature on the channel, that it would actually drag the channel down as far as the algorithm goes. So as a result of that, it's kind of not in my interest to put it up on the general YouTube. And I figure the people who probably are the most interested in hearing it most likely are the folks supporting me over on Patreon. So that's where that's going up. First video on that went up today, basically just as a statement of purpose. And that is, I'm getting my plug in there. So you got to insert the plug smoothly. It's very important. So that is available to all tiers of support on Patreon. Even the $1 a month support tier gets you access to the author diary, which is going to be, right now the plan is a bi-weekly upload for that. So let me just jump back to this. As a non-binary person, I'm getting good vibes. Oh, well, welcome. I'm listening to one of Yahtzee Crowshaw's story, Mog World. It's bloody hilarious. I'm trying to remember which of his I bought on audio and I haven't gotten to yet. I think I bought We'll Save the Galaxy for Food. I haven't started it yet because I'm working on other, reading projects that I'm trying to get through. So here's your reminder, and I'm pretty sure the person who said this knew that. Drink question tonight is my thoughts on the D23 Star Wars footage, which I don't really have any. I don't really know what to make of it. If I'd thought much of it, I actually would have done a video on it, but it's so brief and it's so out of context, and I'm not enough of a speculation person to just start throwing theories out. That's just not where my head's at. I could try to do it, but it'd be pretty disingenuous of me, and that would just be click hunting. I'm not going to say I never come up with theories, but it's so rare that if I'm not feeling it naturally, I'm not going to force it. And force it. Star Wars and I'm ashamed. Let's see here. Still not seeing the Star Wars footage. Well, I mean, it's basically got one very intended to stir up interest sort of bit of imagery in it. The footage told us nothing. It was pure fan service. I'm not sure if that's fan service, because fan service has to be something that fans want. I don't know if what that footage implied, which I seriously doubt is exactly what it looks like, because just look at the track record of the Star Wars marketing for the main saga. But so I seriously doubt it is what it looks like. And I'm not sure I call it fan service, because I'm not sure that's what fans want. But it is very much a get people talking, because I think they know that the speculation cycle keeps Star Wars in the conversation a lot. I'm very cynical about the footage. Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you. Waves, and you will give your opinion. I mean, that's kind of all I've got, is what I said. When writing fantasy, do you embrace tropes, or do you prefer to subvert them? There are some tropes that I deliberately went out of my way to avoid at all costs. I'm not avoiding all tropes, and the ones that I come across aren't necessarily ones that I'm doing on purpose or trying to subvert, but the ones that I went out of my way, like I had a set of rules. the do not do under any circumstances rule, which were actually basically linked because they have a similar vibe to them, but they were no chosen one. Actually, there were three, but they're all kind of connected. No chosen one, no prophecy, no darkness gathering strength, none of that. Those are my three rules for this book. Was to not tread in any of that, because as much as I can enjoy, big epics, world-shaking stories, that's at the end of the day not my favorite kind of storytelling. I'm really partial to what I think of as big stories, small stories in a big world. So my quintessential example for that is always Blade Runner. Because the world is massive. Visually, you get so much of the history and the sense of this place. But the immediate story being told and the characters involved are not important. Not in the grand scheme of things. And that's the same reason that my favorite Star Wars movie is A New Hope, and my favorite Lord of the Rings movie is Fellowship of the Ring. It's the ones before the stakes became save this entire world. That's just kind of where my head goes. And so that was very much the sort of scale that I wanted to work at for this story. I wanted it to be a story that maybe would cross over with significant events in this world, but none of these people, none of these characters in this story are ever going to be written about in the history books. They are not the movers and shakers of the world. They're just trying to get by. I prefer to subvert tropes, but not on their own. We have to gain something by subverting the trope. Yeah, I mean, subverting it for its own sake, that can be just as dangerous as just giving into it. What changes most about your book since you started writing it, apart from how much you've written? I mean, what changed the most was sort of the scale of the narrative. So the story was always fairly small, but as originally written, I had a lot more points of view than I ultimately ended up with. So, trying to think of the best way to put it. So, there are still multiple points of view. It's not like first-person narrative, but we jump, from I think ultimately I ended up with three, arguably 4 points of view, but one is very clearly the primary point of view. My first finished draft and the first few revisions had probably 6 or 7 points of view. It was much more an ensemble piece, but what I realized as I was revising was I kind of lost the main narrative thrust, and the character who I'd always kind of posited in my head as being the main character didn't feel like that anymore, because it felt much more about a story of an event than a story about this character. So I had to dial back the number of perspectives and narrow the focus much more clearly on who is my main character. And part of that is what happens with just falling in love with your own creations. Because part of the reason I ended up with so many perspectives was I really liked a lot of these characters, and I really wanted to spend more time with some of them. And the only way that I could do that was to lend them their own perspective, because narrowing it down to the main character primarily meant I lost whole scenes that just the perspectives I restricted it to meant I wouldn't get that scene. There was no way I could have it. But I ultimately realized the narrative didn't need it. I just wanted it. So those are the kind of things that happen over time. I find cutting down work... Oh, hang on. I lost it. Let me back up here. I find cutting down work to its minimum is an interesting experience and love minimalism in my own work. Yeah, getting it... What genre is the book? Sci-fi, I assume. No, it's actually fantasy. There are sci-fi elements because there is sort of steampunk-esque technology. So that's kind of there. But yet, narrowing down has been... I mean, that's basically what I've been doing for the past 5 years or so with the book, is just focusing. Although, this latest revision, I did end up adding 2 chapters, primarily because there was a character who for what ends up happening to land properly, I realized we needed more time with this character, just raw time. And I had to figure out what to do with it, and I realized that if I just rearranged a few things, it gave me some extra time without needing to add a perspective, but just gave me more time in the scenarios I'd already created, and I'm working on that right now. When do you think you'll get it published? Next year is all I'm committing to right now. I'm going through another revision right now. I'm also this is me getting ambitious. I've started working with an illustrator, so I don't know how many illustrations I'll ultimately end up commissioning for this. It's definitely not going to be one a chapter. I can't afford one a chapter. It's too many. But there are going to be illustrations at select key points for either key beats or establishing things. You know, like the first time the main character sort of gets a look at what ends up being the primary location of most of the book, that is an image I've actually already commissioned, so we get the first look of this location, because that's going to be important. So I've got that going on, and that's part of my things right now. And what will probably happen is after I finish the revision pass that I'm doing, I'm going to start looking for beta readers to get a pass on that. And then if I'm very lucky and if I've gotten paired with a publisher, start working with them on a final edit. And if I haven't, find a way to scrape together the money to hire my own editor, which is what I had to do with my last book, with Skirting Gender, which isn't fiction. This will be my first, work of fiction, prose fiction. Oh, for God's sake, hold on, guys, this damn thing. Sorry, give me a second. I've got this thing that's popping up and blocking my view. There we go. Do you have any advice for writers with less of a platform for getting their work out there? And thanks for answering in general. I really don't, because the problem is I'm not actually great at self-marketing. To whatever degree I have a platform at all, it's by accident, and I don't know how I got it. Like, honest to God. There are some YouTubers out there who have a lot of really good advice, and some of whom I've taken. There's one, oh God, hang on. Let me see if I can get her name correctly, if I'm gonna. Jenna Moreci. Last name is spelled Moreci. She does a lot of videos talking about things like publishing through, the advantages of publishing through Amazon versus publishing through Ingram. I've done both. Working on getting an audiobook put together, general things. She's very good. She has a lot of really good advice, and she's very good at the marketing end of things. She has built herself a platform in a way that I definitely haven't. How would you feel if a fourth Star Wars trilogy is ever announced? Okay, I'm counting that as a Star Wars related question, so everybody drink. They kind of have announced a fourth one, because supposedly Rian Johnson's still working on his own separate trilogy that isn't part of the primary saga. What Lucasfilm has said is that the main Star Wars saga, the Skywalker saga, the numbered series, ends with episode 9, and I expect them to hold to that. Have you ever read the Wanted comic series? I have not. I saw the movie, liked it well enough, but I mean, it's also Mark Millar, and I'm not a huge fan of Mark Millar, if I'm being completely honest. Would you ever write your own Doctor Who novel? I mean, if they commissioned me, if they paid me, heck yeah. For fun? No. I take it you heard there's going to be a Breaking Bad movie coming to Netflix soon. I did! And they had the first trailer, and interestingly, it looks like it's going to be a direct continuation focusing on Jesse Pinkman, which, I mean, okay. I'm curious. And having it on Netflix makes it an easier call because I have Netflix. So for all intents and purposes, for me, it's practically free. Hang on, I'm going to jump back over to the Discord real quick and just see what questions I was given there. Because as a reminder, the Discord is a Patreon exclusive perk, and if you are on the Discord, I actually have a channel for the live stream where folks, even if they miss the stream, can ask questions, and I promise that I will address them here, the ones that asked in the Discord. I, of course, try to answer all the questions that I can, but at this point, like, the thing scrolls by quick, and sometimes I ramble, so I don't get to everybody. Let's see. How close to the idea that you initially had in your head is what you have written down now? In the case of the book, the first thing that I scribbled out in relation to this is literally about half of chapter 1, as it exists right now. It's actually crazy how little the core idea changed. Like, the idea and the presentation got refined, but from initial kernel to general outline to writing it down, very little changed, broadly speaking, in terms of the way the narrative flowed. And I pretty much ended up with what I thought I would. Whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know. We'll see if anybody likes it when I actually put it out there, so who knows. What are some of the positive and negatives you've discovered about self-publishing? Is it something you'd recommend? Whether or not I would ever recommend self-publishing, I think has to do with two things. One, how much are you prepared to market yourself? And I say that as someone who does not do that well. And I know I don't do that well. And part of the reason I don't do that well is I don't enjoy it. I don't like selling myself. I like just doing what I do and hoping people find it. That's the first thing, because if you enjoy that and or are good at it, ideally both, then self-publishing makes a fair amount of sense, because you'll be good at the thing that you need to do in order to get the thing out there. The other thing is, do you prefer ice cream or frozen yogurt? Generally ice cream. Check out Skullduggery Pleasant. Okay. Anyway, so as I was saying, the thing with self-publishing, the reason I went the route of self-publishing, both with Skirting Gender and probably will end up doing with this book, is I've already been shopping around for publishers for a few years and haven't been getting any bites. And at this point, I've basically accepted that I'm not going to find a publisher for these works. And so at this point, it becomes a matter of I need to be able to draw a line under this project and be done, so that I can move on to other things. Because otherwise, it's always going to be occupying part of my brain space. So broadly speaking, if I could have gotten a publisher, either for my last book or for this one, I would. I would absolutely get with a publisher for a number of reasons. One, most publishers, if they are of any note, because there are a lot of shady publishers out there, like quote-unquote publishers, like, you do have to be very careful. Because if word gets out that you're trying to shop around a book, you're going to get solicitations from some shady people. But assuming you pair yourself with an actual publisher, generally they're going to cover the editing, which is a serious expense. So there's that. And then any decent publisher has a marketing on. You'll be expected to do as much marketing as you possibly can, but if they're going to go to the expense of getting an editor on it and publishing it, they're going to want it to sell. So therefore, they're going to actually put at least some marketing muscle behind it that most of us don't have. So for me, self-publishing is the because I don't think this is going to get out there otherwise option. It's basically the nuclear option. It's not something that I actively recommend based off my personal experience, both in terms of going through the process, which hasn't been awful, but again, I know there's important elements that I'm not great at. And then just also the fact that I'm pretty sure that a publisher could have sold more copies of my last book and my play than I have managed to. So, you know, if I could have someone to help with those things, I would absolutely love that. But I don't. So I do what I can with what I have and I move forward. I tried to write a Doctor Who story. The notion of writing a Doctor Who story, again, which I probably wouldn't even attempt unless somebody paid me, very intimidating. The very idea of trying to write Doctor Who is intimidating. I watched Torchwood Children of Earth after your review. I liked the storytelling, but it was really uncomfortable to watch. Yep. Is it possible to love something and hate it all at once? Yes, it is. Absolutely it is. The Black Mirror episode, White Christmas. I love it and I hate it. It's absolutely possible to love and hate something at the same time. Quick, rate all 5 Jurassic Parks. What, on like a scale or just relative to each other? Because I could probably rank them better than I can rate them. I don't think in terms of rating systems. Oh, cool, you have a play. How different did you find it? For me, for some reason, I find it easier to have long works in play form. Well, the play, okay. I gotta be careful how I talk about the play because the play is not for the under 18 crowd. But the play actually was very, very smooth writing experience for me because I've acted on stage. I mean, community theater. I've never been a professional actor, but I've acted on stage a lot, so I'm very used to scripts and the flow of scripts and thinking about, as an actor, how do I want this to read? So writing the play was actually, for me, very easy. And it also left out a lot of the stuff that takes up a lot of time when you write a book. Because when you write a play, you generally, stage directing, you only write down what is super important. You let the director and the actors figure out how it's going to be presented otherwise. So you don't have to go into a ton of detail describing every action that a character takes, only key ones. Whereas when you write in prose, when you write a novel or a short story, you need to very clearly and thoroughly explain what is going on. I have tried to watch Ralph Breaks the Internet earlier. Ooh, I'm sorry. You ever gonna visit Doctor Who's origin country? What, the UK? I already have. I've been there. It's how I found Doctor Who. I was in London on my honeymoon, and I was browsing channels. I'm going to hop back to the Discord real quick. Any tips on improving dialogue writing? Yeah, just say it out loud. And if you have a friend who you're not too embarrassed to have the two of you speak it to each other. And just hear how it sounds said. Because generally, if you have stilted dialogue, if you actually found a way to hear it, you'd realize, oh, that doesn't sound right. And I say that as someone who really enjoys writing dialogue. That's usually actually the first thing that I write, is I'll sketch out dialogue and then fill in the rest later. I decided to do what you did, rewatch New Era Doctor week by week on Wednesday. Tomorrow I'll be on The Empty Child. Oh, Ben, we'll enjoy that. It's a good time. Not fiction related, but I've always been wondering this for a while. What do you prefer, the Arachnos from Runaway Bride or giant spiders from Arachnids in the UK? Ugh. I suppose I'll take the Arachnos. It's slightly more inventive. How do you feel about fan fiction? I feel like that's a way people get into writing. I mean, that's how it works for me, to be honest. I mean, fan fiction's fine. I mean, I'm definitely not I'm not someone who judges fan fiction. Or judges anyone who writes that. Like, what I encourage people to write. And whatever inspires you, write that. If what inspires you most is an existing creation, then write that. Because the more you write, the more it becomes a habit and it's something you do regularly, you'll find the more ideas that you have, which is the biggest trap that so many aspiring authors fall into. They just sit on this one idea forever and just like keep focusing on that. And like maybe they'll only outline it, they won't even really write it. But the more you write and the more variety of things you write, it's like anything. You put in your 10,000 hours at something, you will become good at it. And I mean, that's become true of me with video editing. I can turn these things around very quickly, and I can usually ramble and not have to do a lot of edits because I've done it a lot. I've sunk a lot of time into it. Not with a goal of getting better on it. It just happens. I mean, so whatever keeps you writing. And if that's fan fiction, awesome. Write fan fiction. Understand that you're probably never going to get to, publish it, not without a serious reworking, but whatever inspires you to write, do that. Absolutely. Hold on. I said I was going to jump back to the Discord before, so now I'm actually going to do that, like I said I would. Would you be opening to help write a script for a sci-fi comedy TV pilot I'm working on? I would if you paid me. Other than that, like, I've got too many things going on to be lending free help on other people's projects. Like, I don't mean to sound super mercenary, but that's just kind of the reality. Do you have any tips on how to write compelling characters? What I would say is there's a thing you should do, but then you need to be careful not to do something as a result of that first thing. You should know the background and the history of your characters, and you should know the reasons why they behave the way they do. They should never be acting for no reason other than it's what moves the plot along. You need to understand your character's history, backstory, motivations, ways of thinking. But having said that, you need to resist the temptation to dump all that information into the narrative, which is very tempting to do, because if you sink a lot of work into a character's backstory and history, and you know, like, their entire life from childhood up to whenever the story starts, you're kind of going to want to show that off. You're going to want to put that in, but don't. If it's not relevant to the immediate story, don't put it in, but have that knowledge so that you understand the full dynamic of the character you're writing. But just avoid the temptation to shove all that context into the story if there isn't a reason to put it there. Let's see. Said here, somebody asked a good question, but I didn't see it. Hang on, let me back up, see if I can catch it. How do you tackle the subject of symbolism and being subtle versus only thinking you're being subtle? Example, Anakin in the prequels being Immaculate Virgin Birth. I mean, for my part, I don't do symbolism, not on purpose. I tend to favor the J.R.R. Tolkien approach, which is to aim for applicability, but not allegory. The difference being, allegory is something where you directly put something in, be it a character, an event, or what have you, that has a one-to-one correlation in the real world. You wrote this thing and it really represents this. I don't do that, and that's where you tend to get symbolism. It tends to come in hand with allegory. I favor applicability, which is you write something that could be interpreted as this, or maybe this, but does not automatically, oh, it must be this. I think applicability is way more interesting and way more accessible than allegory. Allegory is where you tend to get really pretentious. It's not impossible to make allegory work, but in my mind, it's much harder to make that work. It's one of those things where, like, it's hard to thread that needle. Any advice on writing short film scripts? All I'm doing is trying to be efficient, only include things that move the plot forward. I mean, that's the main thing. If you're writing anything short, whether it is a film script or a short story or what have you, succinctness is going to be your key. And this is honestly why a lot of shorts, especially short works of fiction, short stories, almost always tend to have twists or reveals at the end. Because you don't have the time to get into super depth with the characters. So a good way to try and make your story stick in somebody's mind is to have a twist. Not that I'm necessarily saying you should inject one if there isn't one already in your story. But I'm just saying that's why they tend to show up in shorts almost all the dang time. But other than, like, whittling it down to being as sharp as... And also realize being efficient is not the same as being fast. You can take moments and have a slower pace and still have an efficiently told story. Efficient just means no fat. Nothing there that doesn't need to be there. It does not mean that you're going breakneck speed. Although if you want to do that, you know, that's the choice. Do you draft characters based on people you know personally, or does your lawyer say not to answer this? Not on purpose, but it does happen. Looking back, there are a number of characters in the book who I know exactly who that is based on. At least in terms of the initial spark of the character. I don't try and keep them consistent with their real life counterparts because then I'm kneecapping my narrative. But yes, I will never name names as to who any of those are. And it's not every character either. But there's a fair number of the characters, although oddly not the main character. But a fair number of the characters in that book have direct inspirations from people who I've known. What is your favorite genre? Mine tends to be fantasy and sci-fi. I mean, I do like fantasy and sci-fi. I tend to gravitate slightly more towards sci-fi because sci-fi is more likely to do the thing that I talked about way at the start of the feed, which is small stories in a big world. Because sci-fi can deal with, you know, the smallness of humanity, how small we are in the universal scheme. So whereas fantasy really tends to lean into epic stories more often than not. But, you know, that's not always what I favor. But I do like fantasy quite a bit. Hang on, let me catch back up here. Gail Simone is a great comics writer. Oh, yeah, she is. I love Gail Simone. I also like Warren Ellis more often than not. Chris Claremont's great. Yes, finally taking care of my federal student aid. Congratulations, Connor. Best of luck to you. Who is your favorite comic book writer or writers? Okay, so I'm trying to think. Does anyone? I mean, Neil Gaiman when he writes comics. Alan Moore is always interesting. I don't always like what he does, but he's always interesting. Even his more recent stuff. Like Promethea was fascinating. It's weird, but it's fascinating. I'm fairly new to comics and looking for some new great stuff to read. There's so much to choose from. I mean, if you want to stick within superheroes, Gail Simone is a very safe bet. She's very, very good. What audience is your novel aimed at? Also, I've seen your video on killing characters in the LGBT spectrum. So, is one of your main characters LGBT? So, I have well, all right. There are 2 characters in the book who are somewhere on the LGBTQ plus part of that whole spectrum. Only one of them is explicitly noted as being such. One of them isn't because I legitimately could not think of a way to make it clear, because that element for that character just is not part of their story in this particular narrative at all. And I just could not figure out how to make it clear. It's implied if you pay attention, but I expect most people won't catch it. Funnily enough, I've actually written 75% of, not necessarily a follow-up to this book, but something set in the same world. And that has a number of, it has a higher percentage of LGBTQ plus characters than this book does, though there are some in here. Oh, and in terms of what audience is the novel named at, and that's part of why I'm not great at marketing, because it probably could work for a young adult audience. It's certainly accessible to a young adult audience. I would say even possibly middle school range, but it's not necessarily specifically targeted at that age range. It's lacking a lot of the elements that you would often put in a YA novel. There's no love triangle. There's no sort of equivalent of a high school dynamic. You know, there isn't a lot of the things that are normally injected in something specifically aimed at YA. So I tend to think of the book as young adult and up for a target audience. But again, if I was better at marketing, I could answer that better. And I'm just, I'm not. Have you ever read Rat Queens? I love Rat Queens. One of the episodes of the podcast I do with Liz, Tough Like a Girl, part of the Fire and Water Network, go subscribe. We covered the first volume of that. That book's great. I love it. If you were to write an episode of Black Mirror, what would your central idea or technology be? I don't know, because I haven't thought of one already, and I'm not going to sit here and have you watch me go for 10, 15 minutes while I try and think of something. So I don't know off the top of your head. Who would you want to see play your setting in tabletop RPG form? Well, I mean, biased answer, I'm going to say the cast of Improvised Weapons, because that's my favorite RPG podcast. So people should have seen that coming. Your YA sounds like my YA. No love triangle, more coming of age, no romance. Yeah, I mean, yeah, pretty much. And mine's not even necessarily coming of age. It's more trying to get free so that he has the ability to come of age, because he's got a lot of things potentially restricting his life. What is the piece of writing that you are most proud of? This is off the Discord. Funnily enough, the piece of writing I'm most proud of is a short story that I've also shopped around and has not gotten published. I don't expect ever will, but I am super proud. It's this short story. It's my take on The Last Human Being Alive story. I'm really proud of that short story. Like, I'll go back and reread it sometimes to see if I want to revise it again, and I don't end up tweaking more than a couple words, and I always end up going like, oh, no, I'm really happy with that. Dang. So I keep falling into this is also off the Discord, so I keep falling into this trap of all my characters being males in their early teens, because that's what I relate to most. Any tips on how to stop doing that? Well, the easy way to start stopping... Ooh, goodness, excuse me. The water came back up on me, because that sentence made sense. So the easiest way to start stopping doing that is just write the characters as best as you understand them. Then go back and start tinkering with who they are and altering things like their age, their gender, their race. But don't just do it and then change nothing. Do it and then figure out how would that alter the way that they behaved. So I've always said, and I've said this with representation and with everything else, it's much easier to change something that exists than try and make something perfect that isn't tangible yet. So I think you'll have a much better luck trying to alter characters that you actually have something down on the page for than trying to formulate something that's outside your experience before you even write it down. So write what you know and then go in and add the nuance and the diversity and things like that. Now, as you ideally get more comfortable with that, if you do that for long enough, you'll get better at starting to think of these characters at the very inception of the story as being something other than, you know, a direct equivalent to your own experience. But as a place to start, it's okay to make the changes retroactively, so long as you go through the through line of realizing, okay, if I take this male character and make them a woman instead, how would that change the way they behaved? How would that change the story? And then make those changes, because otherwise it's sheer tokenism. Let's see. Would you want your book to get adapted into a film? I mean, that'd be nice. I wouldn't expect it to, because for how much it would cost to make, it's not an epic enough story. And that's another thing, especially with epic fantasy. Fantasies are expensive. And in the minds of studios, big money means you tell a big story. And again, it's very deliberately not. I actually remember having the thought like a decade ago, so again, reminder of how long I've been working on this freaking thing, that the best adaptation would probably be a TV show set in the world that maybe crosses over with some of the events of the book, but is not actually an adaptation directly of the books. I'm not sure if I still feel that would be great, because that was like my my mid-late 20s ego, imagining all the fame and fortune this book was gonna bring me. Oh, the folly of youth. What will it take for you to watch Years and Years? Well, for starters, I'd have to get a subscription to HBO again. So that would be the first thing. Because I canceled it after Game of Thrones ended. And no, not out of spite. I had always planned to cancel after Game of Thrones ended. Would you like to see any Sarah Jane Adventure villains appear in Doctor Who? I'm not sure I would, because Sarah Jane Adventures are pitched so differently, because it is much more, that is a kid's show. Doctor Who is a family show. The whole family can watch it. Sarah Jane Adventures really is aimed at kids, and the villains kind of reflect that to a certain degree. I've seen people say that they want the Trickster to come over, but even the Trickster is, it's the Saturday morning cartoon version of a Doctor Who type villain. I'm not sure that they would actually cross over very well, to be completely honest about it. Let's see. Hold on. Hold on. I had something, then I lost it. Have you watched The Boys? I have not. Who would you say is the worst writer you've seen or read? I don't know, because when I start reading something that I really don't enjoy, I stop reading it. That's the thing. Reading something is a much bigger time commitment than watching a movie, or even, these days when most shows don't have more than 13 episodes a season, even finishing a season of a TV show isn't that huge of a time commitment in the big scale of things. Finishing a book that you're not enjoying, that's a slog, and I don't do it. Have you watched The Umbrella Academy? I did. I enjoyed it pretty well. I really liked Klaus, Five, and Hazel, especially. I didn't love Vanya's storyline. I liked it enough that I'm looking forward to a new season. Let's see. The problem with changing characters' ages is that it's set at a school. Oh, okay, so age, you won't really get the chance to change ages then. The main problem with them all being teenagers is that created a plot hole of where are the parents? Well, depending on the nature of the narrative and how realistic the setting you're working in is, you can just get away with that with suspension of disbelief sometimes. Because there are certain genres, especially when you're dealing with school-age characters, certain adventure stories or supernatural stories or whatever, like things like The Goonies or Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where you do a slight token acknowledgement of maybe the parents of one character, but like nobody cares. Like, it's a logistical plot hole, like where are the parents, but if people are here for what you're doing, if they're here for a teenage adventure story, for example, they don't care where the parents are. As long as you're not having things happen that like would really go, okay, that would get back to the parents and somebody should step in. But like, if they're just don't seem to take a huge interest in their kids, fine, just move forward. Don't get hung up on things that are plot holes if the nature of the genre you're working in actually doesn't demand that that stuff gets answered. Have you seen Her starring Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson? I haven't. It's been on my list forever, but I have not. What is your favorite time period for a show or book to be set in? I'm just fond of completely original worlds. So then I guess time period removed from ours. Whether it is far future, altered history, fantasy setting, basically anything other than the present. Anything other than present day Earth is usually my favorite time and setting. Do you have a least favorite live action superhero movie? I don't know. Maybe Catwoman? I don't know. I'd like to write my own take on Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde because I believe Jekyll is the real villain. He created Hyde because he didn't want to take responsibility for his own actions. Cool. Do it. Jekyll and Hyde's in the public domain, so you don't even have to worry about how much you're ripping off the original. You seen the 1990 Captain America? Nope, I have not. Stephen King's On Writing, required reading or not for aspiring writers. I haven't read all of On Writing, but the little bits and pieces, like snippets I've seen from it, and bits of things that I've seen quoted from it, and general writing advice that I've seen Stephen King give, would lead me to believe probably worth reading. Again, I haven't, but I'm extremely interested in what kind of music you like. Oh boy, that is a classic drink question. Haven't gotten that one in a while. I'm all over the place. A lot of soundtrack stuff, a lot of movie and like video game soundtracks. Like a random smattering of pop and rock. Like I've got so many songs, like artists that I have one song from them. I don't have a ton of albums. As far as musical artists or who I have multiple albums for, it's people like Lindsey Sterling, Pink, Miracle of Sound. Those are some of the big Weird Al. What is the best horror book or film you have ever read? I'm not a big fan of horror movies, but I love horror stories and would love to hear what you think about it. I have a very odd relationship with horror as a genre, which is that I like a lot of the trappings of horror, but I'm actually not a big fan of the tropes of horror. And what I mean by that is I love monsters, I love ghosts, I love gothic atmosphere. But I find most actual horror stories to be very tropey and very predictable and adhere very rigidly to certain formulas. And I get bored with them very quickly. That's why I really love someone like, say, Guillermo del Toro, who will take horror tropes and visual cues and make something like Shape of Water or Pan's Labyrinth, which are, it's arguable how much they are or aren't horror stories, but they're absolutely steeped in horror iconography. I love that kind of stuff. As far as the most horrifying movie I ever saw, I still think the third act kind of lets it down a bit, but Under the Skin, I forget what year the movie came out, but it's a Scarlett Johansson movie. That thing is unsettling as hell. Oh, thank you, Kaylee. Let's see what we got here. Give me a second. What's your favorite classic short story? It's funny, like, short stories have a tendency to, like, to a certain degree stick in my head in terms of, like, remembering, oh, and I remember this happened, but, like, then remembering the name of it or who wrote it, I'm not great at. Like, one of the only ones that I can think of, I remember there was a Lovecraft short story that I read that I cannot remember the name of now. It was written from the perspective of somebody, like, trapped in a tomb trying to get out. And I won't say more of it than that, but I remember, like, really digging that one. Again, though, now, luckily, it was, like, the first time I'd seen that particular aspect that ends up happening in that story. But again, it's the kind of thing I've ended up seeing in a lot of other horror, especially horror short stories since then, and that's kind of what I mean about horror being tropey. Sorry, scrolling back up. I like horror elements and non-horror things. Yeah, that's a lot of fun too. Explains why you love Buffy. It's horror aesthetic, but it's a superhero story. Yeah, pretty much. How many series will you go through before Overdue Doctor Who reviews finish? Well, I am very strongly considering continuing on through, even through stuff that Mysterious Color from Outer Space. It wasn't that one, I don't think, but I have read that one. That one was interesting too. I'm not necessarily going to recommend Lovecraft. It's kind of a loaded thing to try and get into his stuff, but I found it interesting. What the heck was I answering before that? I'm trying to remember now. I have now completely lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah, Overdue Doctor Who. So I may actually start doing revisit reviews of stuff I've actually already done reviews on. So that would be once I hit Day of the Doctor. It might go from overdue Doctor Who review to take two Doctor Who review. We'll see. I'm considering it. We'll see, because I'm a few years away from that. So we'll see what things are like for me at that point. Any main pitfalls to avoid when writing something for teenage guys? I have no idea because I write for myself. That's part of why I'm weird and iffy on when I tried to answer the question of who my novel is targeted at, because I didn't write it for a specific target audience. I wrote it for me. So that's I'm not even sure if I can answer that. Okay, jumping back to the Discord real quick. What genre do you enjoy writing the most? I mean, I have the most fun in fantastical genres. So, horror, sci-fi, fantasy, just in general. I don't have a specific one of those three that I enjoy writing the most, but I've messed around in all three. Do you write with a purpose in mind at the beginning? And similarly, someone in the Discord also asked, are you the type to plan ahead or write where the story takes you? So I know where I'm going to end when I sit down to actually start writing something. And the few occasions where I started writing and I didn't know where it was going to finish, I never ended up finishing the story because I lose a sense of momentum. I need to know a destination. That said, I don't thoroughly outline. I don't do a point-for-point outline of the whole thing before I start writing. But I do know ultimately where I'm going so that I can steer the narrative where I want it to go. That's not to say that the narrative can't still surprise me as I go. It can, and that has happened, especially with something like the book and other longer material. It's gone directions, and certain things have happened, and certain characters and certain events and the way they connected were not planned in advance, and they ended up surprising me. But I do have a destination in mind, and for me personally, I kind of need one. Because if I don't know where I'm going, eventually I'll lose momentum and I'll lose my drive to finish it. So hold on, let me come on back. Is it okay to publish fan fiction that's had the iconic elements altered? I don't know. That's really something that I feel like that's a case-by-case basis thing. Because here's what I would say. If you write something that's a piece of fan fiction that is very much deliberately and explicitly written as fan fiction, and you then want to publish it so you remove all the copyrightable elements, in my mind, ideally, you also massage the narrative, or more specifically, massage the characters so they are not just straight analogs of whoever they started out with. In other words, you don't only change the name, but still have the character effectively function exactly as the work you were writing fan fiction on. That said, to what degree you need to do that for it to, at least in my mind, completely depart it from whatever work you originally derived it from, that's kind of a case-by-case basis thing, and I can't really give you a hard and fast rule. But in my mind, you need to do more than just change the names and what things are called. Do you have a bow tie ready for Series 5? Oh, I do indeed. Bow tie and fez. Yes, I have both. Not related to the topic, but what is your main pet peeve? My main pet peeve is people shortening my name. Because, I mean, obviously I have multiple things that I go by. I go by Nathaniel, I go by Vera, but I've never gone by Nate, or Nathan, or Nat. And I don't mind correcting people once. If I have to correct them more than once, I hate that. And what I really hate, what drives me nuts almost more than anything else, is if I'm meeting somebody for the very first time and I say, hi, my name's Nathaniel, and they go, hey, Nate, nice to meet you. If I wanted you to call me Nate, I would have said, hi, my name's Nate. I didn't, said my name's Nathaniel. I know it's 3 syllables and that's a pain in the ass, but that's my friggin' name. You want to talk to me? Use it. Or call me Vera if you want fewer syllables. I'm not going to say there's no shortenings of my name that I accept, but it's very limited. And it's like because of specific relationships I have with those people. In general, I'm not a nickname person. That does drive me absolutely nuts. So let me see. How do you feel about people longing your name? I mean, if you actually want to write that out every time, hold on, let me see if I can even say this. Nathaniel, oh God, see the thing's moving on me. Hold on. So this is my longed name. Nathaniel Adoron Philanthropa. I mean, if you actually want to say it every time, I'll be impressed. Are you a fan of My Chemical Romance? I actually am not. I can never remember if I've actually heard any of their stuff or not. Like, I know the name. I don't know if I've actually heard any of their songs. Nathaniel Chan. Oh, goodness. Nathanielicious. Oh, boy. Nathaniel Laxicorco Fallopatorius. Oh, boy. Oh, this has become a thing, and I kind of love it. All right, so I'm going to jump back to the Discord real quick. Where do you go? Every writer, even aspiring writers, favorite question, where do you get inspiration from? Actually, more often than not, I've had inspiration spawn off of like literally either hearing or thinking one thing. And then my brain starts to build something around that. So like the book that I'm working on now, that I'm working on the final revision on, and hopefully we'll publish next year. It spawned completely out of me laying in bed in college, not being able to sleep, and just having an image in my head. Just a very simple image of a young man laying down, and just basically me, I was laying down not able to sleep, so I had an image of a young man laying down not able to sleep, and I just started extrapolating that. Well, why can't he sleep? Because he's in pain. Is it physical pain? No, it's there's physical sensations, but it's something internal. Well, what is it? There's something inside him that he's trying to hold back. It's endangering other people. He needs to get out. And then just building this scene around this initial kernel. And as I said, that's actually still in the book. That's still chapter 1. Or the play that I wrote. Almost nobody's read the damn thing. But that entire play, which has two characters. It has a female character and a therapist type character. It's weird and complicated and NSFW, but there's actually a line in the play that she says to him, well, you know, I grew up assuming that nobody would want this. And that was something that I heard somebody say. You know, I think we were hosting a small gathering, and one of the people there, who I thought was a wonderful, beautiful person, said that, and that really stuck in my head. That this person who, like, I thought was stunning, thought that about themselves, and just sort of starting from that kernel, I ended up writing a play, just extrapolating from that. So I take inspiration from like small things that my brain just builds on. And if it builds enough, I decide, oh, I can do something with that. Who would you cast to read your play opposite you if you put it on YouTube? Well, actually, I know exactly who I'd cast to read the play, and I've actually had them read it. There's two people in town here where I live who were not, neither one was the initial inspiration that I just mentioned a minute ago for the thing to be written, but I always wrote it with them performing these characters in mind. So, like, if I had the disposable income to be able to fund a properly recorded audio drama, I would absolutely bring in the two of them and have them read this play and release it as an audio. And I would love to do that, but I can't. I have neither the time nor do I have the funds. Nor would I expect to be able to raise the funds through something like Kickstarter, because like I couldn't even get the play to sell very well. So, but yeah, no, I know exactly why I cast, and it's nobody you've ever heard of. It's just local actors here in town where I live. Oh, wow, so many hearts. Ooh, that's beautiful. Do you like Next Wave Agents of Hate by Warren Ellis? I don't know that one. I do like a lot of Warren Ellis's stuff, though, so I'm curious about that. What Lego sets do you have? Lego sets? I don't. I have individual Lego figures, which my partner Liz got me, of characters who I've cosplayed as. So I have a Poison Ivy and a Wonder Woman and a 13th Doctor. So hold on. I've run a little overtime, but that's okay because I'm having fun. Let's see. Going back to the Discord. Do you have a particular writing schedule? At the moment, I don't, because like I have to grab time when I can. Like in an ideal world, if I ever was able to have my creative works or my Patreon support get me to the point where I wouldn't have to hold down a 40-hour-a-week day job, which I still have, I would absolutely have a writing schedule. Like 3 hours in the morning, like first thing. That is what I would like to do. That's not what I do because I can't. And, you know, trying to regularly find writing time is really hard. When I was powering through the book, like that first draft, and really forcing myself to get it done, I was writing on my lunch break at work at the time. So that was half an hour a day, which is not a lot. You actually don't get all that much done in a half hour, even when you know exactly what you're doing and where you're going. But that was how I powered through getting a first completed draft. Aren't all authors dead now? Yes, every author is dead. It is true. Is an audiobook an option down the road for your fantasy story? Again, if I can find the means to finance it, maybe. Like, if I had the money personally, just for my own edification, I'd want to do an audio drama with a play before that. But I mean, like, if by some miracle, and I do not expect this to happen, but if by some miracle, if the book sells well, yeah, sure. But, like, I'm not going to promise that or anything. What's your opinion of Slipknot? I have none. I just know them as the guys with the weird masks. I don't know a single piece of music they ever did. I mean, I'm sure their stage shows are amazing. I don't doubt that. Have you seen Shawshank Redemption? My dad showed it to me the other day. It's one of my new favorites. I haven't seen that movie in ages. I have seen it. It's been a long time, though. Been a while on that one. Do you listen to audiobooks? On occasion. I've started to get into them more, but not with any regularity. That's an occasional for me. Just started my first theater class at school, and I love it so much. I do miss theater classes. I miss theater classes. I miss writing classes. They were a lot of fun. Who would you say holds more authority and importance over creative decisions in a film, writer or director? Oh, the director. Because no matter what a writer puts down, once it's in the director's hands, the writer is completely out of the loop. Excepting the rare situations where the writer is also a producer or something like that, which almost never happens. But, you know, the minute you put a script into a director's hands, it's not yours anymore, it's theirs. Now, some directors will reshape a script and mold it into something else. Some will just shoot what they have. That depends on the director. But the director has way more control over the final result than a writer does. And that's not only true of film, that's true of plays. I wrote a short play that actually made it into a festival of 10-minute plays. And I went and saw it performed. And it absolutely broke my heart. because it's only a 3-character play, and one of the actors made choices that I just hated. I absolutely hated what he did with it. But at the same time, that's the nature of theater. Once it's in the hands of an actor and a director, I can't control what they do with it. It was not what I wanted. It was not what I intended. It wasn't what I wanted to see done with the work. But it's what they did. I can't control that. That's one of the things about working in either film or stage. You need to be prepared to relinquish control because you're not going to have it. Have you ever done Nanowrimo? Not only have I done Nanowrimo quite a few times, I've A, actually never completed it successfully, and B, almost every year, I tell myself I'm not going to do it, and then I end up doing it. I think the most I ever did, I think the furthest I ever got was I got 30,000 words one year. If people don't know, NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, which is November, I think. The goal is to have 50,000 words, new words, for a new work written by the end of the month. I've done it a number of times. I've never completed it successfully, and I haven't finished any of the works that started as NaNoWriMo things. That said, once I get this frigging book published and off my back, I really want to revisit some of the stuff that started out as NaNoWriMo projects. Out of the things you want to do, what do you enjoy the most? Writing, burlesque, YouTubing, acting, or something else you do? I can't tell you a favorite because I kind of need all of them. I need the variety in my life. What do I like most? Whatever one I'm doing at the time. I need the ability to shift between different creative modes. Because otherwise I stagnate and I burn out. I need to be able to jump around. And so whatever one I'm doing at the time is generally the one I really want to be doing right then. Which keeps me loving it. Next live stream topic. Nathaniel gives a live reading of When She Wakes with audience participation. Oh, Meg. That is cheeky. Okay, so When She Wakes is the name of the play that I wrote. I wrote it. I got it. It's on Amazon under Vera Wild as the author. It's we should get demonetized forever, Meg? Yeah, that Carowinds basically said it right there. This channel would go away for eternity if I tried to do that. It would be a fun way to commit channel suicide, I suppose. Have you ever thought about checking out Short Trips or on Big Finish? They're the least expensive, and I think they deserve more love. I actually have. And also, Big Finish has a sort of a contest thing that they do every year that I wanted to pitch something for this year, but I couldn't get anything pulled together in time. I'm going to keep an eye out for it next year. You should definitely check out Taika Waititi's TED Talk. It talks a lot about being a creative person, yet channeling that through a variety of different mediums. Cool. I greatly enjoy watching your videos and these live chats. Please don't ever stop. Don't plan to. I love doing this, and it is my hope to try and continue to grow the channel and the Patreon so that this can be how I make my living. I'm still a long way off from that, but the level I've already gotten to is amazing and higher than I ever thought I would. So I still have hope. But, it's a long way off. Did you finally see the video that LGBTQ YouTube made about the legal action they were taking against YouTube? I did. I had a hard time finding much write-ups about it in terms of the specifics of the lawsuit, which is kind of what I'm curious about. I saw the video announcing that they were doing it, and I'm curious, but I really want to find out a lot more of the specifics of exactly what they're claiming and exactly what recompense they're seeking, because depending on the angle they're coming at this from, I could theoretically get behind it, but this is the kind of thing that you need to present a very careful legal case for, because otherwise you're just making a show. And I honestly am not sure how much that helps, especially given that it doesn't actually seem to be getting that much press. So I really hope that it's being presented on very sound legal footing, because it doesn't seem to be making much of a splash otherwise. So, favorite series of Doctor Who? Series 4. Wait, yeah, what's going on with LGBTQ YouTube? Yeah, see, that's kind of my point. So, Meg, what's happened is there are a number of LGBTQ plus YouTube creators, none of whom were people I knew, but they're all bigger than me, who have rallied together and are suing Google and YouTube for discrimination. Having, at least as I understand it, and again, I can't find a lot of details on the case they have actually brought and whether or not a suit has actually been filed or if they've just said they're going to. But, running experiments like uploading the exact same video, but having one of the times it was uploaded say LGBTQ in the description, and that got demonetized, and the one that didn't have that didn't get demonetized even though it was the exact same video. And they're using things like that to build a case, an anti-discrimination case. Again, I don't know enough about it to know how sound the legal footing is. That's what I'm really curious about, because I hope it's solid. Because if it's not, then this is an attempt to bring a public eye to a problem that is failing. Because the public doesn't seem to know about this. I didn't know about this until it got asked about in the chat. So I really hope it has solid legal ground, because if their only hope was to make a big splash and start a conversation, it hasn't done that. Wish I was able to support financially. Unfortunately, not able to at this time in life. But when I can, I definitely will become a patron. You deserve it for the joy you bring. Well, thank you, Brittany. And yeah, I know I mentioned the Patreon, and it's amazing the level of support I get. And when I get, I've got the super chat on this, and anytime somebody drops something in there, that's amazing. But I really kind of want to be careful. I don't ever want people to feel like I'm trying to guilt trip them. But it would be really nice to have this be how I pay my bills. Didn't you have that happen with your hashtags? Not on this channel. On the Vera Wild channel, I went through several months of everything getting demonetized the instant it went up. And then always getting cleared on review. And then it happened here at the same time, and my suspicion was, I'm not as solid in this at the time that I said it, but my suspicion was they had facial recognition clock me as being the same person as running the Vera Wild channel, and they were automatically flagging those uploads, so they started automatically flagging Council of Geeks, and they both stopped at around the same time. So I have a suspicion that that was a case where doing daily uploads actually really helped me, because I think that after, who knows how many, but enough times of they demonetize, I ask for a review, I clear the review, demonetize, review, clear, demonetize, review, clear. I think after doing that, I don't know, 100 times in a row, they stopped auto-flagging me. But that's supposition on my part. I don't know, because YouTube and Google doesn't talk to anybody. One of my closest friends recently came out to me as transgender and is terrified about coming out to her parents. Any advice for a friend wanting to be there for them? Ask if they want an ally in the room when they come out. Don't inject yourself there, but ask if they would like you there. Because having somebody there that they know has their back can be a really big help, be a really big boost. This is for everyone who can't donate. Oh, thank you, Silent Chariot. I prefer classic to new Who, but I think classic Who's pacing is overrated. 4-parters are like, but some stories you can tell in 45 minutes. Stories should be as long as they need to be. I'll agree with you on that, Ben. Every now and then I'll come across a classic story that's, I'll come across 6-parters that could have been 5, 4-parters that could have been 3. most four-parters are okay, but I find that in most things that are more than 4 parts long, there's usually at least one episode that feels like filler. Hold on, I'm gonna jump on back to the Discord to see if there are any that I missed over there. Do you have any advice on how to get started as a freelance writer? I really don't, because I don't consider myself to be a freelance writer. It's one of those things that, like, if I didn't have a 40-hour-a-week job, I would be putting myself out more for, pitching articles to websites or publications and trying to build a freelance portfolio. But I don't have time with the YouTube and full-time job and trying to do that. It's the kind of thing that I could do if I either wasn't doing as much YouTube as I do or wasn't doing the 40-hour work week. But since I need the 40-hour work week and I really enjoy the YouTube, and actually at this point it does pay enough to basically be a second job for me, then I don't have the time and the energy to push myself to try and get enough freelance work. What I would say, though, in general, is if you know the kinds of things that you feel you have qualifications or solid pitches to write about, just start looking at online, notable online news sites or article sites that write about that kind of thing. And most of them will have a submission page where you can pitch them an idea. So just start pitching, and maybe it'll get picked up. And then ideally you'll build a portfolio of freelance work, and then maybe they'll even start coming to you if you do that for long enough. But again, that's me kind of how I think it's supposed to go. I haven't actually succeeded at that, and I haven't even really properly tried, again, because I don't have the time. Let's see. I think I've got one more here. So I do a similar thing for my stories that you said you do. An image comes to mind or a character, and it just builds and builds. How do you stop it from building? Like, not to expand too much and stay focused on what's at hand. I mean, that's a big part of why I need to know where I'm going, and I need to know where I'm choosing to end the story, because otherwise things balloon and get out of control. If I know where I'm ending, then I know at what point I can stop building a character or a world, because at a certain point I'm building stuff that doesn't feed into or affect the narrative, and then I know I can safely stop. I think I am going to wrap it up soon. Really starting to hate your job. No comment, but that's the end of my water. If you were writing fantasy for children, what would you do different? I actually did start, for one of the Nanowrimo things that I started, I did start a fantasy book that was aimed at a younger audience than the book I'm mostly talking about today. And that, I knew was going to have a slightly more whimsical feel. I knew it was probably going to be shorter. It has a younger protagonist. So there are things like that. Again, I didn't finish it. So I have a concept, but part of the reason I didn't finish that one is I didn't know how it was going to end. I had a concept and a pitch and a character and a setup, but I didn't know how to end it. And that was part of why I lost steam on that one. So that's kind of what I said before. Last drops of water gone. Yes, indeed. Did you hear about the Smosh member Courtney, who recently came out as lesbian? It's great to see LGBT plus members anywhere. I don't really follow Smosh or their stuff, but I mean, like, anyone who is able to come out and not have it completely destroy their lives, that's awesome and amazing. And if you come out and it does destroy your life, that's terrible for you, but I still, wish those people the best as well. But yeah, I think I'm going to wrap it up. So, reminder, slip one more pitch in there. I have started a writer diary, an author's diary for this book that I'm hoping to not hoping. I will publish in some form by the end of next year. And if you are interested in that, it is a Patreon exclusive. Any level of support will get you access to those videos. The first one went up today. That'll be bi-weekly. And as I start ramping up to the actual release of the book, I may, no, I will release like a highlights and pared down version of the author diary on here, probably as to build up marketing steam. But for the more complete thing, that'll be on Patreon. Link in the description. Hey, there it is. All right, so I hope everybody has a good night. Have a good rest of the week. Happy writing. And just remember, folks, that you are beautiful, you are loved, you are valid, and you are the council. I'm just running the meetings and apparently writing a book in my spare time. What spare time? I don't know. Must have some. I wrote the dang thing. Have a good night, everybody.